Grand Ole Opry legend Stringbean and his wife were murdered in their home back in 1973.
He was one of country music's most beloved figures, David Stringbean Aikman, the banjo-picking comedian with a heart of gold and a smile that lit up the Grand Ole Opry stage. But in 1973, Stringbean stood just over 5 foot. He was tall and always wore suspenders and a smile, and every Saturday made Americans laugh. David Stringbean Aikman wasn't there that night, just an entertainer who played the banjo. He was an important part of early country having fun with. His famous live shows on the Grand Ole Opry to Hi-Ha will never forget his appearance there. The big Stringbean became an icon. Pants, the quick wit, and the hot banjo licks. He was loved for more than just his, not for his ability but for being himself. But there was a man behind that country charm, born into a hard family in the country. The Great Depression changed Kentucky. Stringbean didn't trust many people and kept keeping his life and money close to his chest. That care, on the other hand, may have painted a that was on his back. In 1973 the impossible took place between Stringbean, and he and his wife Estelle were found dead in their simple Tennessee home. The world of country music was broken, and the investigation quickly led to 2 men. People were arrested, and then cases began. It looked like justice was done, but what did people ask that never really stopped? Did they know when Stringbean would do something? Go back home that night. Why was the house robbed, but most of the money was still there, untouched? And the most scary of all was, is there someone else who has never faced justice for years? And ideas did the rounds. As clues came to light, fans made some thought it was just a theft gone wrong, and others said there was more. There is something darker and deeper hiding behind the tape at the crime scene. And now, since decades, no one has known what the truth about what took place that night in the hills of Ridgetop is now known, and at the end of this movie, the mystery of Stringbean's death will be solved. In the early 1970s, Stringbean was more rather than just a funny figure. He was an important figure in country music, and everyone who watches TV every week, people all over the world, watched to see him make jokes and bring his guitar to play on Hi-Ha. Wit and artistic genius from the Appalachians all across the country, Stringbean was famous, but he never, even though things had changed, he still lived like a man from the hills. Not a nice car or a big house, a simple wood cabin tucked away in Tennessee country. While other stars bought house and ate at country clubs, Stringbean and his wife, kept chickens were cooked over chopped logs. He spent his money on simple food. Just as old-fashioned. Born during the Great Depression, Stringbean had seen people lose everything when banks fail. It wasn't safe for him to deal with banks. Instead, he was known to carry a lot of cash on him and hide money in different parts of their house. Locals heard a lot of stories, and bands and artists alike didn't use Stringbean. He hid his money in banks and the walls of under the floorboards of his house, even behind picture frames that are real or those false. Stories spread quickly, and some people began to see chances. Despite being rich and well-known, Stringbean was still wary of new people. He had been robbed while driving once, something that left him even more careful. He and Estelle, rarely visitors who were entertained, stayed in the circle, tight and stuck to a routine that never. On Saturday nights, they'd changed show at the Opry and then drive back to their remote house. That gave them a routine. It gave them comfort and made them. It could be predicted, and that accuracy was what left them open to attack. At the time, everyone knew that someone had been looking, waiting, and listening. Even though Stringbean's jokes were funny, country smile, someone close to him was. The whispers are planning something bad about secret money, the home in the middle of nowhere. It all added up to a lack of safety. Some people can't fight the urge to do it. Essie and Bean had worked hard on their whole lives to make something honest, something calm, but the things that in their own minds, that made them safe. Plain clothes and trust would soon be why their lives were taken away. And on a quiet November night, the dangers would break through. On the night of November 10, 1973, Stringbean did what they always do at the Grand Ole Opry. People who saw him said he was having fun, joking with friend, performing backstage while playing his banjo with her own style. Estelle was with. He was always happy and helpful. They told each other after the show that, saying goodbye, they got in their small car and took the same drive back to it was a farmhouse in Ridgetop, Tennessee. A path they had been on many times before, but that night there was different guys they didn't know about were already in their cabin looking forward to John Brown and his cousin Marvin Brown were small-time crooks with a habit of stealing. They knew the same stories that were going around Nashville that Stringbean kept $20,000 in cash hidden around his house. The Browns thought it would be easy to score. They knew Stringbean's plan would not be there on Saturday night, so broke in and sacked the house. Tried to get money and waited for the to come back when Stringbean and soon after, Estelle got home. At midnight, they were met not in quiet but by fear. The exact events inside the house are still being talked about, but what is known is scary. Stringbean walked in first and was shot right away and killed close to the opening. When they heard the noise, they got out of the car. They went toward the cabin but were shot down on the way. Getting outside to get away or help her husband, she was found the next morning, lying on her back near the road. The news shocked her while she still had her purse in her hand. Country music in Nashville and around the world fans couldn't believe that they let the funny man into their homes. Every week had been killed in cold blood. Fellow players were heartbroken. People who like country music have always been close, and the death of Stringbean and Estelle made them feel close to everyone. The police came quickly and were shocked by what they found. Even though the house had been torn apart, the thieves didn't get most of the money that Stringbean had lied about. After that, thousands of dollars were hidden behind a brick was found chimney and hidden in the walls. The killers got nothing at all. They had blood on their hands and a trail that would soon bring them right to them. As the community mourned, a greater fear began to form. Take root. If you love someone and as low-key as Stringbean could be, Browns were the ones who were really safe. Had killed more than 2 people. Nashville's peace has been stolen, in which the arrest happened rather quickly. Days after the killings, police focused on they think John Brown and his cousin Marvin. It didn't take long for the Browns had a history of crimes and had been seen talking about getting new money in the wake of the deaths, links to the area and their sudden getting to the money raised right away. John Brown was caught first. He first said he was innocent, but it quickly broke when questioned, telling a story that is full of not making sense. When they went to court, the facts of the crimes were made public, and they were as annoying as they were pointless. The officials said the killings were not only acts of greed but also figuring out what the Browns had brought with them. They had brought guns and were ready. They were alone for hours and had no plan to leave witnesses at the trial. Fans of Stringbean all over the world, friends in the music business and regular people crowded into the hall in the search for justice. What came out was a sad story about how envy and desperation lead to had come into contact with innocence, and that the Browns didn't just kill broke a man's name who had risen from poverty in the Appalachians to become one of America's favorite acts. Had been killed because of a story about John Brown. Was given a sentence of 198 years in jail for his cousin Marvin, who had a less important part in the crime and switched states. Witness got a for a while. It looked like a lighter term made it look like justice had been done. But time would make that sense of closure less clear. For decades, from 1964 to 2014, John Brown will spend more than 40 years in prison. Was given parole. The move caused uproar in the country music world. Friends of Stringbean, such as fellow Opry veterans and group members of Hi-Ha the People, strongly opposed the release. How could a man who did something so horrible and planned murder go free? To many it felt like the wrong had been done. Brown may have done his time, but to those who knew Stringbean could not write a sentence ever match how bad his loss was. Release was a somber warning that truth and morality don't always go hand in hand. To make things even worse, the parole hearing showed that Brown had something chilling. He never showed regret and kept a vague story, kept direct statements of guilt, and didn't make the leave friends and loved ones behind. It wasn't just about punishment, was about the lack of responsibility. That the person who killed Stringbean never fully gave that life back. But not really, not in sadness, not even in words. After the killer's attention turned to what it was after Stringbean and Estelle had left. And it was harder than anyone thought. Even though he was famous and long-time appearance on shows like Hi-Ha and the Grand Ole Opry, Stringbean was known for being cheap bankers because they grew up during the Great Depression. He often kept a lot of money hidden in his house. It turned out that this habit became a deadly weakness. When authorities looked through the Achaean cabin after the killings, they found thousands of $1,000 hidden in strange places behind bricks, inside walls, and even under floorboards. According to some accounts, Stringbean was sitting on almost $20,000 in the house, worth a lot of money at the time. In 1973, especially when you think about how humble he was, life. But there was no will or clear advice on what should happen to his estate. The accident wasn't just a sad event, it turned into a cost and time issue. Mess Estelle's family got most of what she had of the land, even though it was simple. Claims came after rumors of more hidden money kept coming in for years ago. Wealth hunters even broke into the old house a long time after the killings, sure that more money was still tucked away. The house used to be a peaceful place to live. Hidden in the Tennessee hills became a sign of both Stringbean's fear and the strange pull that led to his death. When it was made, there were more. Stringbean and Estelle both lost loved ones, had no children, and were related to them. Tried to keep things quiet, but the lights were too bright to miss. The tragedies had turned into stories, and everything, even the land, what had happened, seemed to have cursed them. Friends in the country music business tried. Grandpa Roy Akov needs your help. Jones that they all talked about in public. Stringbean bringing attention to and trying to make the neighborhood safer. Some even ran for office to push for safety changes made to the Grand Ole Opry and better safety for artists who still simple life. But none of it bring peace to the financial puzzle surrounding Stringbean. Became a part of his story. A man who lived and didn't trust banks, who was killed quietly despite success for money that the killers couldn't even find. It was a mean irony that took away from his songs, humor, and that he had built a life with Estelle for a long time. What questions are still unanswered about his money was just another reminder of how much was taken from him when he died. In the years after Stringbean's kill, the people who play country music had a hard time making sense of the loss. For those who knew him well, it was more than just a coworker's death. It was a cruel end to a time. That the humble, kind, and small-town kindness. The tragedy hit pretty hard. Stringbean wasn't the only one who did it. And Estelle, it broke the fantasy that the Opry's country stars were safe and out of harm's way. Many people outside of Stringbean called him a gentle soul, all the time quick with a joke, and not often seen his guitar, even though he was getting bigger fame on hi-ha and years on the Grand on the old Opry stage. He never brought it. Despite his fame, he still grew veggies, and he caught squirrels in his backyard and went to church events in the area where he lived like a man who is stuck in the best. Grandpa Jones could use one of Bean's best friends and co-stars was the person who found their bodies. After that, the memory would not leave him. Life, he would often choke in talks up when he thought about how sad he was that night. A scar that could be seen that never went away really helped heal. Other friends in the industry, such as Minnie Pearl and Roy Clark, said similar things about the loss. It wasn't just sad, it felt personal. Even in the wake of mourning, Stringbean kept his style alive in music, and he mixed humor in a way that no one else did. With traditional Appalachian banjo music making a character who felt both younger, both ridiculous, and deeply human. Bluegrass and country music for generations. Musicians look up to him as an inspiration, especially for his skill to connect with people by being warm and truth. In 2001 at the Country Music Hall of Fame gave Stringbean's adding something new to the game with a showing off his guitar in an exhibit, clothes and pictures from his childhood. It was a rare and long time to be with Bill Monroe. Finally recognizing a man who had done a lot to set the tone and culture of country music, and shows the dedication was moving, and a quiet reminder that even though Stringbean died, in his music and energy are still echoed through Nashville's streets. But as the honors came pouring in and the years went by, but a quiet unease stayed. There was never anything about the whole case. We're sure that the arrests had been. He did his time as a man, but the pain never really went away. The questions fully stopped, and the feeling of having lost someone took something valuable from the heart of country music stayed the same. Under the surface, the belief in John and Marvin Douglas had a shift. In 1973, Everything and Nothing, just weeks after the killings, police caught the cousins. Both have a history of small crime and trouble in the area. The investigation showed that the Douglases had heard that Stringbean's hidden cache is a well-kept secret in the area. People thought the reclusive star kept several $100s in his small house hidden away, and they even put coffee cans under the stairs. For them, it was hidden inside the walls. It seemed like simple money, but it wasn't. When they broke into the Achaean house, didn't find what they were looking for according to the court. They waited in a trap. For Estelle and Stringbean to come back, it was a quick fight from the op. Stringbean was shot and killed just outside the front door. Elle was scared, tried to run away, and was shot dead near the killers left from the back of the house, said to have almost no money, less over $200 and a few personal things in it. Was a terrible act that had nothing to do with show for it but destruction. At trial, though there was too much proof for a witness to be free, sent the suspects to the scene of the crime, and things that were stolen were found in there. The jury didn't waste any time getting control. John Brown got 2 years in prison. Following life terms, Marvin was also found guilty but died in jail years later. It looked like justice had been done, but for many people in the neighborhood, the case they never sat right, so why didn't they? Someone else to find more money took part and were never caught. Had the Douglases did it by himself, or were they being used by someone else with deeper being? Aware of Stringbean's habits even after decades, these questions are still there. In an unexpected event in 2014, after getting more than 40 years in prison, John Brown was given freedom and let go. The release made many people in Grandpa Jones's in Nashville and beyond, family and other people who knew Stringbean, spoke out against the so. For them, the murder wasn't just it was old news, but it was a new hurt that never fully better. John Brown kept up his sorry and said he had found God and he was in jail and wasn't the same man anymore. But not even saying sorry couldn't help fix what went wrong on that cold on November 19, 1973, Stringbean, and the last time Estelle saw them was when they were taken without any reason, and the pain they caused behind was really big for fans and family and friends. The Douglases weren't just as outlaws. They stood for a world, things that had grown colder and more dangerous, less open, and always remembering their names. An important part of country music. Chapters of tragedy are still written in a history of violence and loss, even though Nashville got over the loss and moved on. But the murder of both Stringbean and Estelle Ackerman shook hands. The heart of the country music scene. Stars who once forgot to lock their doors and hung out with friends without any rules get behind gates and set up an alarm systems and think again about what they mean. In a lot of ways, the safety of an age ended with Stringbean, but as years for decades, a strange myth started to build around the man and the cash he had. You've never put your trust in banks before. It was said that after the murder and the trial that String never stopped going around. Bean had saved up thousands of dollars somewhere on his land. Some swore it was in his mattress. It was buried in jars all over his land. In the months after he died, treasure hunters scoured the area and dug near trees, cutting through floors, and even the walls of the Ackerman home were searched. Most people didn't get anything, but then in 1996, something changed. More than 20 years after the murder, workers fixing up Stringbean's old over $20,000 in cash was found in a shed. The bills were so old and worn out that most of them were no longer useful. That it was hidden so well that even detectives in 1973 missed them. This shocking discovery got people interested in case and proved what many people already knew. I always thought Stringbean was afraid of banks. Wasn't just a weird thing, it was the lifestyle. The find brought up new questions. Had the killers known for sure where the money was? Or were they just grabbing at stories, too eager and careless to find the real stash? Did someone else find out where more was hidden and get it? Was there more before the cops arrived? There's still money hidden somewhere. Question marks were added to the Stringbean story. One was filled with music, laughter, and bad luck. At the house where he and Estelle stayed lived a quiet place to get away turned into a kind of spooky shrine. A lot of fans went there, leaving people who sent flowers or notes. Just came to show that the grand old Opry kept his spirit alive. His banjo stayed on show for years in tribute in his honor. Concerts were held for many. Stringbean's death wasn't just personal. It stood for the how weak good people are. In a fans of his story about how the world was changing, that fame doesn't keep you from being kind, doesn't protect you from the quiet life, not always safe, but it also made me remember reminding them of something else, that legacy is, it's not just about how you die. Stringbean Aikman and how you lived a happy and humble life. Lots of laughs and songs that you can still hear in the hearts of those who remember. And the put an end to David Stringbean Aikman's story is an American tragedy in one part warning tale, one part country culture, a story wrapped in a secret that to this day won't die. All the way at the time of he was killed in 1973, Stringbean liked the kind of success late in their careers most artists only dream of. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't atop of the charts, but he was loved by everyone. Saturday night, he was on hi-ha. Caused millions of people to laugh rooms. His songs with that unique banjo sound twang brought old-time music to life. He is humble, raw, and honest, and Appalachia is his. Being married to Estelle was a peaceful time. It's the kind of love story that almost never made the news but meant everything to people who didn't know them yet. While everything was going well, there were signs of a man who was very careful. He'd lived no matter how bad the Great Depression was. He had full faith in banks and carried the money he made in his overalls, buried his savings in the yard, and put together a simple home life based on safety and routine. Surprisingly, it was this lack of trust that might have sealed his fate. The rumors about his secret wealth are going around. Two things they got into the wrong ears. Cousins who were driven by greed and need broke everything. The aftermath of the killings left the Akian family. Nashville was smashed by friends and fans felt like it had lost a family member. A lot of blood at Roy Acuff's funeral said they broke down in tears. Grandpa Jones, who found the bodies and told the court wasn't the same, he kept thinking about the loss of the laughing string. It was loud when Bean spoke to so many people. When it's not there, silence. Often she was lost in the shadow of her husband's fame. Wasn't just a victim. The host for Stringbean was a woman who stood by him through many years of trouble, and her death added another layer to her success of violence, to an act that was already stupid. The truth that they died together while to keep each other safe. Those who were close to the case, the deaths weren't just sad, they were sign of the end of a certain type of America. Trust soft, close-knit. Stringbean wasn't very wealthy for a famous person. He didn't have any homes. He didn't have any fancy cars or protection at home. Ridgetop had a small house with only 2 rooms. Tennessee, meek, sensible, and humble that Bean, but it's funny that he may died with a lot more money than anyone else. Partly believed the decades of tales backed up by the 1996 finding of there may have been hidden cash had thousands more hidden around his property. Money that most likely went to unknown or broken down over time. Had no children. His only relatives were faraway family.